Jane Fonda, the iconic actress and activist known for never holding back her opinions, made a headline-grabbing appearance on Jimmy Kimmel's show that no one could have seen coming. The night began like any other with applause, smiles, and the charm that Fonda has perfected over decades. But behind that grace and poise was a fire that had been building up, especially in light of recent political events and her continued frustration with Hollywood's treatment of aging women. Jimmy, aiming for light-hearted humor, had no idea that his usual style would ignite a firestorm. As she walked on stage, the audience welcomed her warmly, cheering for the living legend. Jane exchanged pleasantries with Jimmy, but even then her tone was direct, firm, and sharper than usual. Jimmy, trying to maintain a humorous tone, began with a joke about Jane's age, saying, "You've been raising hell since before my parents had their first date." The crowd laughed, but Jane's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She leaned in slightly and replied, "I've been raising awareness, Jimmy, not hell. There's a difference, and I've still got more energy than most of the men in this business." The crowd applauded that remark, but the tension on stage became slightly noticeable. Jimmy, brushing it off, moved on to ask about Jane's recent environmental protests and her frequent arrests. "You've practically got your own cell at this point," he quipped. Jane laughed politely but responded, "At least I'm being arrested for something that matters. I'd rather go to jail standing up for the planet than sit comfortably on TV laughing about it." That line drew a mix of claps and silence. Jimmy tried to recover the levity, but found the conversation slipping out of his grip. Then the turning point came when Jimmy asked about Jane's old controversial statements during the Vietnam War era. "Do you ever regret the whole Hanoi Jane thing?" he asked. The room went dead silent. Jane's eyes narrowed. "I've answered that question for 50 years, she said sternly. "But if we want to talk about regrets, how about we talk about the media's role in perpetuating lies instead of healing history?" Jimmy looked stunned, not expecting such a strong and pointed answer. The energy in the room was shifting dramatically. Jane continued, "I'm here to talk about the climate crisis, women's rights, and the state of democracy, not relive a distorted version of my past that distracts from real issues." Jimmy, visibly trying to steer things back into entertainment, Mode forced a chuckle and replied, "Wow, Jane, you're really bringing the heat tonight." To which she responded sharply, "And maybe it's time someone did. You invited me here knowing who I am, not some docile guest who smiles for camera." Time. By now the audience was fully alert, unsure whether to clap, laugh, or remain silent. Jane, unfazed, continued her fiery streak. "When women speak with power, they get called angry. When men do it, they're called passionate. I've had enough of that double standard," she said. Jimmy, trying to interject, started with, "Well, I think," but Jane cut in again. "No, Jimmy, let me finish. You wanted a conversation. This is what one looks like when it's not edited down to sound bites and punchlines." Jimmy leaned back, attempting to regain some control of the stage. "I admire your passion, Jane," he said, "but we are still a comedy show." Jane tilted her head and answered, "And I came here thinking it was a platform to reach people, not a circus to water down serious issues. Maybe that was my mistake." The audience gasped softly. The mood was no longer comedic. It had turned into something raw and real. At this point, a few producers were seen whispering backstage, unsure of how to handle the rapidly escalating situation. Jane removed her earpiece and said, "If this isn't the space to speak truth, then I won't waste your time." Jimmy looked over to the crew, perhaps signaling for a commercial break, but Jane wasn't waiting for a cue. She stood up from her chair, turned to the audience and said, "Stay informed. Don't let the gloss of television keep you from seeing the world as it is." As she began walking off, Jimmy called out, "Jane, you don't have to leave. This isn't how this was supposed to go." Jane paused briefly, turned around and said, "Exactly, it's not how it was supposed to go. I came here to talk, not to be managed." The audience clapped, many standing up in a spontaneous show of respect. Others sat in stunned silence, not sure what to make of what had just unfolded before their eyes. The network immediately cut to a commercial, but the moment had already been clipped and uploaded across social media platforms. Within hours, Hashtags like Lochna Jane Fonda Unfiltered and Fonda vs Kimmel began trending. Fans praised her for refusing to be sidelined or trivialized. Some criticized Jimmy for trying to turn serious discussions into light entertainment. The internet was ablaze with opinions, commentary, and viral video edits. News outlets picked up the story almost instantly. Some headlines read, "Jane Fonda walks out on Kimmel in powerful rebuttal," while others accused her of being too intense for the format. Pundits debated whether late-night shows were still relevant for real conversations or merely vessels for sanitized celebrity PR. Jane, as always, had become the center of national debate yet again, but this time it felt different. Less scandal, more awakening. Celebrities began voicing their support. Actress Susan Sarandon tweeted, "Jane Fonda is everything I aspire to be at 86. No time for fluff, only truth." Others chimed in, sharing clips of Jane's remarks and urging fans to listen instead of react. It sparked a wider conversation about aging in Hollywood, the treatment of women with strong opinions, and the urgent need for real discourse on national platforms. Jimmy Kimmel released a statement the next day saying, "Jane Fonda is a guest I've always admired, and last night was not our best moment. I respect her right to speak her truth, and I wish things had gone differently." While the statement tried to strike a balance, many fans felt it lacked sincerity. Critics pointed out that trying to control a guest's message undermined the idea of authentic television. Jane Fonda didn't release a formal statement. Instead, she uploaded a video to her personal social media platforms, summarizing the message she never got to finish on the show. "They wanted comedy. I wanted conversation. Sometimes those don't mix. But I will always choose truth over applause," she said calmly. That video gained over 10 million views in less than 24 hours, solidifying her status as more than just a Hollywood legend. The fallout didn't end there. Viewers started pushing other shows to reconsider how they treat older women in media. Discussions sprang up around how often experienced voices are silenced in favor of more palatable, marketable soundbites. Jane had unintentionally ignited a movement, proving once again that her voice, even decades into her career, could still shift the cultural conversation. Jane's bold walkout became a symbol of self-respect and refusal to compromise. She appeared on other platforms afterward, including serious news programs and respected podcasts, where she discussed the issues that mattered to her: climate change, justice, and dignity in storytelling. Everywhere she went, hosts let her speak fully, giving her the time and space that Kimmel's show failed to offer. Meanwhile, Jimmy's ratings saw a dip, and there were murmurs within the network about rethinking the tone of future interviews. Producers faced pressure to better prepare for guests who weren't simply there for promotional fluff. The contrast between the usual light interviews and Jane's piercing truthfulness made many rethink what they expect from such shows. Months passed, but the incident remained part of pop culture memory. Memes were made, analysis videos produced, and the moment even got parodied on sketch shows. But the underlying message remained powerful. Don't underestimate women like Jane Fonda, especially when they've spent decades learning how to use their voice. Her outburst wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, precise, and deeply rooted in conviction. Eventually, Jane was asked if she'd ever return to Kimmel. She laughed and said, "I have nothing against Jimmy, but if I come back, we're doing it my way." That simple response drew applause from her audience and proved she bore no grudges, only a desire for respect. Her fans admired her more than ever, not just for her past activism, but for her present fire and unwillingness to shrink herself for comfort's sake. In the end, Jane Fonda's clash with Jimmy Kimmel was about more than just one night on TV. It was a collision of two worlds, one comfortable with surface-level charm, and another demanding substance, change, and truth. Jane didn't just walk off a stage. She walked into history, again, as a woman who refuses to be silenced. No matter how bright the spotlight or how loud the laughter.